What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And we're going to do kind of a little bit of a mini community feedback. We've seen some interesting comments. And there was one that I thought was really important to highlight and share, kind of kick off this discussion. As always, feel free to weigh in below. But this is an important kind of piece because it kind of sums up what we are seeing with the theme with several of you. And so this isn't just Quentin saying this. This is several people kind of echoing this mindset of, and I'll just go ahead and read the comment and we'll just kind of talk about it. So he says, I won't say the game is going to be a game changer, but it's just going to be more of the same. The story will be great, but everything else will be so-so. And it's kicked off like a mighty discussion. If you guys want to go weigh in on that discussion, that sounds great. But I want to toss over to Chris to get his core thoughts here. Is the game just going to be like a great story and then so-so gameplay? Like, what are your thoughts here about Endwalker?
I mean, it's definitely iterative in nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we look at each system within the game, it always picks up where the previous system left off. And in this game, we don't even iterate within a system. We usually go build a whole new system, right? So we move from chocobos to full-blown squadrons that we can take in dungeons to trusts that now expand on lore by doing that. And like, so everything kind of moves forward, but they build on each other. And so like if you're looking for a brand new game experience, if you're looking for full innovation, then what you really want is a new title screen. You really want to go for something like Final Fantasy XVI or something like that, where it's all new. And there are a lot of all new MMOs coming up this year. So even within the genre, that's available. 6.0 is going to pick up where Shadowbringers left off, but it's not just a narrative experience. And I can tell you that as somebody who's played this game up until relatively recently, considering the length of the history of the game, without caring about story at all.
Yeah.
There's plenty of meat on this bone. You don't have to like story to like this game, which means that if you think the story is going to be great, there's also other things. There will be new raids and new trials and all of that. And I think that if anything, those have only gotten generally better as we've gone. I think Eden was a great series. So I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do with the next set of encounters.
Mm-hmm.
But if what you don't like is 8-man content where you don't stand in bad and you do your rotation, it's going to have that.
Yeah. The same thing also applies to the end game. Now, will they change it up? Probably not. Should they? It becomes a really hard discussion to have because everybody's going to have a very like different opinion, especially on this. So just note that wherever you fall, like just sound off. Let us know kind of where you fall in that regards, because what I'm going to say is this, is that while I think the 2 tomes in a raid is going to be concerning and you're going to see more of that being echoed if they continue on that pattern. So there comes a time where there's going to have to be some innovation, some kind of change up that happens there, or there's going to be a time where you kind of see that pattern and you decide when to play. A vast majority, I would say, of this game plays the game for its story, and then there's a good chunk of people who stick around for the MMO piece of it, and that means that they go ahead and take breaks. I've continued to support and advocate for them taking more risks, bringing a little bit more MMO into the game core itself, but at the same time, setting my expectations so that when that doesn't necessarily do that, when they don't necessarily like overhaul the open world content and make it relevant and engaging, that I'm not sitting here mad at the game itself and deciding to kind of like peace out, etc. So I think one of the things that I am kind of concerned about going into Endwalker is those who didn't see the pattern up to this point, where like if you're coming in brand new and you're playing through the game and you're gonna kind of cross into that finish line into Endwalker and you're gonna get into the end game as my voice cracks, like I don't think you'll see any issue. You're like, this is actually a really good system, and it's why it stood up so long up to this point. But if you've been here from ARR, Heavensward, Stormblood, Shadowbringers, and you're like, oh, it's there's 2 tomes to collect that I can get gear from. There's a raid that I can run, and if I want to challenge myself, there's an even harder version that I can do. You might be like, well, what else is there? And that's kind of why I think almost in a way, and this is kind of be frustrating for some to hear, the whole island farming thing, like that sounds like really interesting as a piece of content. And I hope that it is something that is very exciting and fun and that you can personalize. Chris, you got a thought?
I think what you started to note on the end there, Tux, goes all the way back to the beginning of your point on that keyword innovation.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about innovation as a scoreboard, that's typically where this kind of frustration comes from, is we're all taking in the mainline content, we're all taking in MSQ, and then clearing the content that gets us to at least roughly the next gear level. Maybe you're best in slot, maybe you're just kind of casual, like you're at kind of the feeder gear, maybe you're somewhere in between, maybe you're just slowly progressing over the 16 weeks of the patch and you're missing a few pieces when we go into the next one. It doesn't matter where you fall, that's the main content.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, from an innovation standpoint, we only chalk one up as an innovation point, right? We only put one on that scoreboard when it's innovation we like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ishgard Restoration, brand new. Nothing like that had been done at that scale, period.
Right.
Yes, we've had Dome and Enclave iteration. Yes, we've had collections as a system, but nothing like this. Nothing to this scale. Blue Mage, I know a lot of people don't like it. You can't say it's not innovative. It is a whole new battle system. You know, when we first added deep dungeons, all new, never been done before. When we added gigging to fishing, when we added fishing raid to fishing, never been done before. Our gatherers go into Diadem and shoot rocket launchers at things.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I don't know, because we can have grades of materials that are used really only by players. That's what their value is. Like, we have added systems to this game, but people only count it as innovation if they're interested in it. So there's a portion of the players that think adding Mahjong to the game really expanded their depth of play. There's a portion of other people that said they're wasting my sub money. They're not even putting real content in the game. And so I think when we look at these comments, it usually means that they're either not trying all of the content, or they are trying all the content. And as they look out over the bucket, the game says, okay, I put varying amounts of effort into these 10 areas, and that ratio of priorities just doesn't align with them.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we as players continue to provide feedback as to what we want to see. The devs are listening. Like when we were out at the media tour with a lot of the other content creators, like M Plus as a concept, as a core concept, continues to be brought up to Yoshi P and the team. He is very well aware of that. And so I think essentially it isn't a matter of no, but it may be a matter of wait and time, and hey, you know, they've got to probably like put it on the board and, you know, find the time to be able to design the system, and also maybe even re-engineer the engine itself. One of the things that is not commonly known, but Yoshi P shared with us, is that they had to redo the entire Chocobo companion system, and they did, and you never noticed because it's still, to you, the player, the Chocobo companion system.
That's
but
fine.
The core background of everything was all completely like gutted and redone. And so then when you look at kind of those kind of systems, I honestly think that, like, obviously Yoshi P, in my mind, I believe this truly wants to build the game that we want to play. But unfortunately, a lot of that is hampered by human resources, money, time, and et cetera. And what the game does very well is the story. I think, to Quentin's comment, like, the story is going to be great. Shadowbringer's story is great. If you're playing this game for the story alone, you're going to have a really good time with it. It's a really high quality, you know, just experience to be had. That being said, it's not a perfect experience. There's definitely things that we all want. And that's why, you know, when Yoshi P says take a break, like, the old school MMO player in me is always kind of frustrated by that. But at the same time, like, as a player, one of the reasons why I love this game 10 years later is because I do take time to go play other games and enjoy other games and not just consume one specific game. So the 2 tomes in a raid does concern me specifically, because when I start seeing that already in the previous expansion, note that, like, that's probably going to be the same kind of end game loop that we have going into the next expansion. And here's where I switch the script. No, I don't care about the tomes or the raid until point 4. Like, if point 4 is the top tier gear, top tier tome, I'm not going to spend 6 months to a year, like, actively really trying to, like, you know, get all the tomes every week, you know, because essentially that's not something that I find valuable, because it's content that expires quickly. So what I usually focus in on is making sure my jobs are leveled up, my crafters are leveled up, my gatherers are leveled up. And while I'm not an end game crafter or gatherer, I still like having that piece of content. And so I invest my time into those areas. And then when those areas and that well runs dry, for me in my case, like, yeah, I'll do some of the harder content. I'll challenge myself in unique, interesting ways. I'll participate in the things that excite me the most. and then I'll try to make sure I get my tomes at that point, because in the point 4, that's where like that gear, I think it mathematically in my mind lasts the absolute longest that it could. Chris, you got a thought?
No, they see that. I think that's one of the reasons the Ultimate got delayed, right? Is it was too resource expensive, and they look at all the things that need to get done. They look at all the players they have to satisfy, and it, like, delaying the expansion trade for Ultimate wasn't going to be a fair trade, so they didn't do it. But like an example of this, right, is for anybody that's been watching the press around this game for an expansion or more, or has ever heard the term, cosmetics are the true in-game. Swap the word cosmetics with whatever the cosmetic system is in any MMO. It's always cosmetics are the true in-game. That's the running joke. Glamour gets brought up at every single Q&A.
Yeah.
Every single one.
And housing.
Sometimes the glamour and housing question is unbelievably narrow in its scope. It's, I have this one hat and this one cape, and they don't match in the same color red on my Makote when I'm as a red mage in the one lighting of this one dungeon. Can you fix that? And they're like, what? And other times it's, can you overhaul the whole system so it just works better? And that's just as, we can't tackle that big of a, but the point is there is a general interest. And so sometimes those questions don't feel like they get good answers because the format isn't set up for them to be able to spend a bunch of time logging into that person's character, seeing what they're, but just know that the general trend of those questions getting asked are why we get an explore G-pose system where we can now explore through dungeons. It's why we get bigger glamour dressers. It's why they make a change to the armory chest. Like, they're aware of people's frustration with the cosmetic systems in this game and the constant desire for more cosmetics, and they do it. And so I think, seeing the way that people engage with the game, they're aware of how Brian plays. They're 100% aware.
Yeah.
You heard it here first, guys. Just blame him solely and completely for the Ultimate delay. It was just Brian. Yeah. But in all seriousness, like,
secrets out.
Secrets out. He emailed them. He has that kind of pull. We were allowed one favor. This is what we burned it on.
That's what you get for 11 years of covering a game. You get one.
Everybody gets one. But in all seriousness, like, they look at the way we play. They look at the way we engage with the community as a community. They look at how people spend their time. They look at what people are posting online. They look at Q&As, and they decide where to prioritize their time. They don't just build the game that they want to play. That's a huge driving force. But they say, okay, there's a couple of versions of the game we want to build. What's the one you guys are going to be most excited about? And that's the direction they charge first.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, that's you on behalf of a whole community. So not individually each one of us, but all of us, which means there are sometimes decisions that, there's 20% of the player base wants to do this thing, and I'm not in that 20%. And so it feels weird when a huge portion of a patch cycle goes to a group of people that's not me or maybe my direct group of friends.
Yeah, and my point of bringing this up too, because this is something that, if you do start to experience or you do start to worry, I would recommend at that point either decide to take a break, but inform the devs as to why. Like, hey guys, and it always goes off better. Yeah, don't just leave. It always goes off better in terms of kind of positive critique in that regard. Like, hey guys, I loved your game. I played it for so long. Note that they'll probably flame you in the forums because people have a hard time rationalizing this. Like, the community isn't so great at actually accepting somebody who's saying like, hey, I'll be back, but here's what I would like to see while I'm gone, and that would be something exciting to return. That's a big core reason why Final Fantasy XIV is dying, because you go on Reddit and you say, man, I wish this game did whatever, and you get crucified, and it's like, I want a place where people can be frustrated at the game and find a home in terms of yeah guys, yeah, you might be frustrated, and this might be why. And that ended up being a very positive, asset to the 14 community, despite what people on Reddit say. So the core of it, though, is that note that, yeah, if you're feeling that kind of fatigue in terms of the end game, reevaluate how you approach the end game. Rethink about how you're going to actively focus in on it. Maybe you focus in on leveling jobs as opposed to sitting here trying to grind in my... if I need to get a new, hey, I can't go out. We're frozen in here in Texas right now. So just hold still, buddy. We only got hopefully a couple more days of this. But the core of it, change up the way that you approach the game. If you still want to be actively playing the game itself, don't sit here and stress about 2 tomes in a raid, because you have the hindsight. You have the knowledge that In a couple of months, a new patch is going to come out. That's just going to get easier. Take your time, find what works for you as a player, and don't sweat it. And be like me and wait till the point 4 patch before you care about gearing out that much at all, because that's going to be the longest lasting gear. And if you don't like leveling, if you don't like engaging in the other systems that will be coming with Endwalker, like, just make sure you leave that feedback, especially on the official forums, so that they can get it. And despite what people are going to say, like, don't, love those people as best you can, because they're not where you're at yet. And then that way you can hopefully get that feedback. And then also the devs also know, hey, these people are stepping away and they're looking for X. And if we could develop X, that would bring them back. And then if they do develop the thing that they're missing, come back. Yeah, because that's it. Like,
that's what says, I listened to you and you came back.
Yeah, 100%. All right, guys. Chris, you got any final thoughts before this thing just like continues to beep into existence?
Nope. Just wanted to repeat that last thing you said. if you leave, tell them why, and if they fix it, come back.
Yeah.
Because that's what creates the feedback loop, right? If you don't tell them why, they can't fix it, and if they do fix it and you don't come back, that tells them you are going to screw off regardless, and they don't listen to the next group of people that come by and leave a reason. So that says, no, this is the real reason. If you do this, I will come back.
Mm-hmm.
Feedback.
Yeah, feedback loop right there. Thanks, Quentin, for the awesome comment. Thank you guys for all the discussion you're having on the videos. Let us know what you think. But we'll wrap up today's video, especially as I have to go see if I have a battery. And now I got to go drain the drip pan in the in the freezing cold 5-degree attic that I've got rocking and rolling.
Housing Savage, guys.
Housing Savage, Texas Winter Tundra Edition. Anyway, for Work to Game, my name's Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you next time. But until then,
take care.